We back with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic, and today we're taking a question from the community. I did this recently, going to do another one. You can DM any question that you have to the Daily Vedantic on Instagram. There's 2 underscores in between the and in between Daily and Vedantic. But if you search for the Daily Vedantic, it'll come up, and you can DM any question that you have. The question that we have from the community today is from Edward C., and he says, how do you balance patience with action within the philosophy of Vedanta? Well, as I've said before, 97% of this philosophy, this is just James speaking, making up that percentage, but 97% directionally, it's probably about 97% of this philosophy pushes us towards action. Action, action, action. Action is the insignia of life. Swami will say often at the ashram, action, that is our right. The Gita calls it out. Our right is to action alone, not to the fruits of our action, which means the fruits of our action are not ours. One of the oldest, most revered philosophical texts in the world, the Bhagavad Gita, could be summed up in many ways to you are not the actor, and the fruits of your actions are not yours. So on that second point, that is a major pillar of this philosophy. The fruits of our actions are not ours, but we have a right to action. In fact, action for 99.9% of us, that is the most powerful spiritual path for us to act. There is time for study, there's time for reflection, there's time for contemplation, there is time for meditation, but those are nothing without action. Action, karma, yoga, service is often described as the fire that shows us, it heats us up to show us where our work still lies. Anybody can think they are a sage when they sit down in a quiet room and they feel at peace. But as the adage goes, if you can't meditate in the boiler room, you can't meditate. If you can't remain calm out in the world when, as a firefighter, you need to fight fire. As a metaphorical firefighter, as a parent, as a leader, as a team member at work, if you get so rattled so easily, then what is the point of the contemplative or meditative practice? And the point of that action, of going out into the world, of saying yes, leaning at the balls of our feet instead of always kind of on the heels of our feet with life, being, as Swami will say, aggressively good. That will show us where our work lies, and it will progress us on our path. But this is a great question because how do you balance in patience? I often tell our kids that you can have anything you want in the world if you're patient. You might not get the all-star nod at the NBA basketball game if you're 5'2", but if what you really want is belonging, peace, prosperity, the heart of what you really want, and those other things are just symbols of what you want, patience will help you discover what you really want, and patience will get it. Patience, the root of the word patience, pati, means to suffer. Patience is action. Edward C., within this philosophy, there is action in inaction. This is such a great question because Ramana Maharshi has this great phrase, this great quote where he says, Ramana Maharshi, the great sage within this philosophy, has this great quote where he says, why do you all keep going out and getting burned when you're born in the shade? This is not to say that we are supposed to be complacent at all. It's not to tell us to go sit in the shade. But you can be in the shade, making whatever you are meant to make, creating whatever you are meant to create, doing whatever you're meant to do, performing action, but not getting unnecessarily burned by the sun, not unnecessarily agitated by the world or by our desires. Fully focused, made in the shade, Anybody that loves what they do, that gets, and I think it's 4% of people love what they do professionally. But any one of those people that love what they do, it feels like they're making it in the shade. It feels like play to them. But for them to get to that point where they are perhaps masters at their craft, where it feels like play, it was probably through a lot of suffering, through a lot of patience, through a lot of action and inaction. Deliberate choices to stay in front of the piano instead of going out with friends. Deliberate choices to stay in front of their computer with that project that might keep them seated, but is very much action. Action is not to be confused with movement. Patience is not to be confused with stillness. Patience might very well look like practice, year after year after year, for 10 years before there's anything to celebrate. Within the Venice Vedanta Club, I often say that if I could write down two principles within this philosophy, another word for it is Sanatana Dharma, eternal principles. So it's just a list of principles to live life well and to get what you want. Perhaps the answers to 97, 98% of the questions that we might have philosophically. And yes, I am just making up percentages over here. I said 97 before. This one, I'm going 98. 98% of the questions we might have. I just total finger in the air made that up. But it is so frequently the case that the answer to questions come down to these two principles. One would be the dream example. People ask, how can this be? This philosophy says in the deep end of the pool, I cover this in the intro to Vedanta in the first episode, that this experience here is described as an elevated version of a dream. It is not reality. This is not reality and just a projection of our minds. People often say, well, how could that be the case? This feels real. This has to be real. And go to the dream example. Last night's dream felt real. And as simple as that sounds, as crazy as that might sound, that rock, the dream example, can answer so many of the questions around what this philosophy says when it comes to what we think is reality is just a projection of our minds. You can go back to the dream example. 2 hours ago, 12 hours ago, the last vivid dream you had, you created an entire world through the power of your mind that you thought was real. This philosophy says this is just an elevated version of that. The other rock that encompasses so many answers with so many philosophical questions. This is more on the practical side of things. That's more on the esoteric, abstract, ethereal side of the philosophy. On the practical side, the rock would simply just say, it's not what you do, it's what you do it for. It's not what you do, it's what you do it for. Recently, we had an episode discussing the value of power within the philosophy of Vedanta. That question actually came from Venice Vedanta Club as well. That notion, that thought exercise of what is the value of power in a philosophical pursuit? Well, in many ways, what is the value of power? What should I do with my life? What is the value of community? What is the purpose of philosophy? All of these questions can be answered with this simple principle. If it's not what you do, it's what you do it for. Your power, your ability to influence those around you. The root of the word power is to be able. Your abilities. Well, it's not a matter of having them or not, accumulating them or not. It is, what are you doing with them? What do you do with your time? What do you do with your life? It's not about what you do, it's what do you do it for. This mastery of ourselves that we may gain through patience. The actions that we choose that might have profound consequences. Patience or action. This philosophy says it's not what we do, it's what we do it for that matters. what you are patiently suffering through. It is only relevant when you add in, what are you suffering for? To serve yourself or to serve the higher? That's where it becomes consequential. That's where it becomes agitating, stressful, will burn you out. Or that's where it gives you energy, energizes you, generates energy within you that feels near infinite. Action. It's not what you do. It's not saying I'm being courageous by doing this thing, or I'm going into discomfort, or I'm cleaning this whole house myself. Is it out of service or is it out of compulsion? Action. Like patience, it's not what you do, it's what you do it for that matters. So the reconciliation between the two, between patience and action, the first part is one might very well look like the other. There's a whole lot of action, deliberateness, and staying still. And there's a whole lot of patience that might be in refining a skill or a craft, a practice. Waking up before the sun rises every day. That might be patience. But overarchingly, it's not what we do, it's what we do it for that matters. Do it for ourselves, and this philosophy says it will go awry. Do it for the higher, and it will lead us towards harmony, towards peace, towards prosperity, towards what we are ultimately searching for. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.